An Acadian ambulance is on its way.
Born in the Louisiana Bayou, you can now see Acadian ambulances rolling to calls for help in 33 Texas counties.
You're riding in an ambulance.
I care. I'm here to be the best part of someone's tough day.
What difference will you make today?
Tell that to the family of 68-year-old Francisca Dublon. On September 1st last year, her call for help came from this house on Green Avenue. She was a grandmother in cardiac arrest. It took the Acadian ambulance a shocking 35 minutes to arrive. Dublon would die that night in the hospital. Did that ambulance screw up hasten her death? Her daughter says yes.
I
don't want this to happen to another family because it is urgent when someone calls. It means they should get there right away.
What happened on Green Avenue is not supposed to happen. Under Port Arthur's ordinance, 90% of the time the ambulances that go to emergency calls have to get there in 8 minutes. It's a matter of life and death. Seconds count. Francisca's daughter knows why.
If they get there late, well, they won't be helpful anymore.
We learned of Francisca's death as we continued our investigation into Texas ambulance companies. Our investigation of financial mismanagement at Cypress Creek EMS led to their downfall last year. And now we turn our attention to the Golden Triangle. For more than a decade, 13 years in fact, Acadian has had a lock on virtually all the government contracts out there.
I'd have to wonder if they didn't get a little bit comfortable. If nobody's asking about your performance level, you have to worry about it.
Until Greg Benson became fire chief. No one in Port Arthur city government was even asking for proof that Acadian was answering calls on time. And the chief worries that may have been intentional personal relationships clouding the need for proof of the public safety being delivered.
Numerous members of this department have said that for years there's been a buddy system at work here.
Does that explain why 4 long months after Dublon's death, the city of Port Arthur is not investigating why the ambulance was so late? They should be.
We're playing with people's lives right now, and that's just not fair.
This was an emotional Kaylee Wisnan just a few months earlier in Viter. She says the Acadian ambulance took half an hour when she called for emergency help for her 5-year-old little girl.
She was gasping for air, turning purple. Sorry.
In Port Arthur, the chief was already curious about response times. Acadian, after all, had gotten into trouble for response time violations in other places. Look at this headline from Bastrop County 2 years earlier. And it's not just the response time question. According to the Office of Inspector General last year, Acadian agreed to pay $373,000 in fines for double billing on Medicare for ambulance transports from nursing homes.
It would appear as though a monopoly is in place with this regard.
Last July, the scrutiny of Acadian in Port Arthur escalated after Cordelia Mullen Cole detailed how paramedics dropped her father allegedly from the gurney onto the ground.
It caused irreparable damage that remained with him for the duration of his life.
So I started asking about their performance level, and they're going, oh, Benson's asking about this stuff now.
Acadian had been providing monthly reports on response time to Port Arthur, but the company had created them, claiming they met the city's 8-minute response time rules virtually all the time.
Our compliance record the last 12 months has been about 93% compliant.
You don't believe their response time and what they claim? In May, the chief found discrepancies. Dispatch data revealed Acadian may have failed to include more than 100 incidents in their report. The specter that response time was being manipulated. We don't know if the disastrous response time to Francisca was ever provided to the city. But what happened to her and to Kaylee and Viter may be the same problem. In Port Arthur, the city has not required Acadian to dedicate ambulances to the city full-time. The company uses the same ambulances to cover a lot of the Golden Triangle.
We've had some that have responded from Viter. We've had some that have responded from Orange.
We've been watching too, and this discovery may be even more frightening.
Acadian,
We are your hometown medics.
Acadian routinely cannot send help if a resident of Port Arthur calls 911. That happens.
Yes, it does.
Does it happen a lot?
It does happen quite a bit.
That you had no ambulances available.
Yes, right.
Late last year, the Port Arthur City Council added a second ambulance company, City Ambulance Service. And now the city is effectively cut in half, with Acadian handling calls on the south side all the way to the San Luis Pass. But the days of zero ambulances keeps happening. Folks in Port Arthur probably didn't know that on Christmas there were no Acadian ambulances available for nearly 7 hours. It's one of the reasons Chief Benson has been asking both companies to provide GPS data, which discloses the locations of their ambulances when a call for help comes in.
So when that call comes in, the system says, hey, ambulance X is the closest.
City Ambulance said okay. It agreed to provide dedicated ambulances to Port Arthur's north side. Last November, Acadian was asked the same question.
Are you also going to provide GPS location of your buses?
I would have to defer to some members of our operation team about the technology required.
That was 2 months ago. Still no GPS. It could better track response time and would likely expose how often Acadian ambulances are out of place to respond to help. Acadian claims it has 35 ambulances in the region. Maybe they do, but that's why the GPS is important. Ambulance companies don't make their big bucks on 911 calls. It's the private transfers, often from nursing homes. That's where the money is. It's a prize that comes along with the life and death trust that's given to a private ambulance company to handle 911 calls. And that means policing that 8-minute response time.
Let's make sure that that's being met.
Because you were suspect it wasn't.
Well, just curious, and yeah.
More than curious. You
Yeah.
thought it wasn't being
Right.
Let me get this straight. If we think Acadian is cheating, and the chief suspects they are, and they're hiding records, why do they have this contract at all?
We need to now start emphasizing on the citizens of Port Arthur, making sure they are taken care of.
Without showing us any records, Acadian tells us their response time last September to Port Arthur was under 6 minutes. So then how do we explain it took an Acadian ambulance 35 minutes to reach Francisca? Where's the investigation?